Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is May 7th, 2024, and you're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we're talking all about China and specifically how China is
China.
advancing in the areas of AI. We have Jyunmi, we have Robert today. It was good to see you, Robert, Beth, Andy, and I'm Brian. And yeah, today is literally just that. We wanted to take a beat here and talk about what is going on in China. Now, there's been, if you just do a Google search, and I only say this because I did, and you say AI news in China, you will get 10, 11 stories that are probably no more than 15 hours old. So it's a pretty constant news engine at this point, I would say. And there's been a lot of reports on it. We've seen stuff as far as what they've done with robots. We've seen stuff as far as they've done with like Sora type competitors called Baidu or Vidu. I'd have to look at the name, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we can get into. But it's just a really, really interesting topic, and we wanted to dive in so we can help our audience better understand. Hey, where is China currently in terms of AI? Where are their focuses based on what we can tell? How competitive are they to where US and maybe some leading European markets are as far as AI? And what can we maybe see going on into the future? So that's my intro. I'll leave it there. I don't know. I feel like, well, Robert, you know what? You don't get to be here all the time. You're a busy guy. Why don't we throw it to you first? What was your sort of take on this as you came into this show?
Well, my take is let's start by saying we don't know what they're doing. We only know what they're sharing that they're doing. They don't allow the OpenAIs of the world, so they're developing their own versions of it. They have the Vidu, which is their version of Sora. They have tons. They have hundreds of open source models. They have hundreds and hundreds of language models. They're very prolific in their development of this. So I would venture to guess, and my knowledge base is limited on what they're actually doing, but what they're sharing that they're doing is something to be aware of, I guess. I think that they're going to be very competitive in the near future. I think OpenAI is constantly trying to gain market share, get investors, whereas they're state run. So they have no interest in publicity and PR. So what they're doing, we're not going to know until it's done, until they actually have robots walking the streets, that kind of thing. That's the problem with that kind of country. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, so I agree that they have probably, without our knowledge, AI initiatives that are inside the government and the military. But they also, openly and with our available knowledge, have initiatives where the government is supporting the domestic AI companies like Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and SenseTime. And they make AI a part of their overall economic 5-year plan. I think the most recent one was, 2019 or something. We're into a new one. I don't know what the frequency of them. Oh, they're every 5 years. We know that, but
2017 when they put out their biggest AI, like that was their big first push in AI, started in 2017. So that's about right what you're saying.
Okay, right. And so now we're in the next 5-year plan, and the AI must have gotten even larger because in the year 2018. The government invested over $2 billion in AI specifically. So that was part of the 2017 5-year plan. And now, of course, AI has become a strategic arms and economic race internationally. And China is a major, major player in that sense. What I understand from looking into it is that they have a slightly different focus. While the US is clearly ahead in the development of foundation models, and that by private companies like OpenAI and Microsoft and Google, et cetera. The Chinese focus is on current strategic applications of AI that don't necessarily focus on the large language models and the frontier models, but rather use those to their benefit in those strategic applications. For example, surveillance in China is being, mounted with AI, robotics and autonomous robotics, of course, autonomous vehicles, healthcare, manufacturing, facial recognition, speech recognition, autonomous robotics is, I think, really going to be important both on the military side and domestic manufacturing, where China is probably the largest manufacturing facility in the world. Autonomous robots in manufacturing there will give them further advantages because they have the infrastructure, the factories, which previously depended largely on the very large and available labor market in China, but now can be augmented by autonomous robotics going forward. Let's just talk for a second about their military, aspirations. They want to be the global leading military power by some certain date. I think it's 2030 is the objective, and so they're focused very much with AI on information warfare. It's been reported recently that the war in Ukraine is the first sort of information warfare battleground where all of these systems are being tested, particularly with satellite communications controlling much of what's going on there. And recent news, remember that, China is looking at China and Russia probably together are looking at the ability to cripple the satellite networks of their adversaries, even using nuclear weapons to do that. So they're doing something that's a little different from the US in the sense that our US government has only recently, Biden announced a major AI initiative, and maybe some of you have the details on that. But it's very recent that the US government has stepped up to supporting the private sector, whereas China has been supporting their private companies and investing many billions of dollars in sort of government or state AI.
And I think the one of the things that I sort of, to piggyback on what you were just saying, is where their focus seems to be different. A lot of what I read as I was researching for this show was, they're still for a lot of their applications, let's say, they're still reliant on either building off of US based, let's say, models, language models and stuff. So they're almost reliant in some ways on US or European type technologies in order to go where they want. One area that was maybe not surprising, but was interesting to me was that China far surpasses anybody else in terms of AI research. They produce more English written, and like the studies I showed didn't even show the ones were written in other languages, other natural languages. But in English alone, they far exceed anybody else in the world in terms of producing AI research. And I find that to be really, really interesting and sort of maybe indicative of what the future is in terms of what China can produce. Right now, Ernie, which is built by Baidu, and it's been used now by, I think, over 200 million. Last I checked, 200 million users. They have a free and a paid account. They're not necessarily on par with GPT-4. There might be something closer to a 3.5. It's hard to say. But they do have a lot of models. They do have to be approved by the government, but they've sort of opened the floodgates on that. We've seen a ton of, hundreds and hundreds of models, maybe thousands of models in the last 6 to 9 months that have been approved through their new process. But it's the research is what I want to get back to, is the research that really kind of stood out on the page as far as doing research on this is, that's where it seems like their focus is. And if they're doing that type of research, how much of that is public? How much of that is private? We don't know. We can see what they're putting out publicly. Does that mean there's twice as much, 3 times as much as that does never sees the internet, or frankly just isn't written in English, which would be natural as well?
Yeah, your point was supported by the Stanford analysis that showed that the number of patents being being issued to China or being submitted by China and being approved in international patent arena are, like an order of magnitude greater than the number being.
Oh, the irony of that. Well, considering they don't really honor the patents or copyrights or trademarks of a lot of products. But Jyunmi, I knew you had something to say, but I wanted to introduce the concept of what the Biden administration's ban on exporting GPUs to China and how that's going to how that's affecting them. Now they are getting them anyway through third-party suppliers and back channels, according to recent news reports, and somehow getting the H100s from NVIDIA, even though there is an import ban on them. What do y'all think about that? I mean, Jimmy, if you had a comment about something else, and sorry.
Well, I mean, they're kind of related. I just wanted to quickly touch on what Brian was saying, and the talent pool when it comes to AI researchers. A quarter of all AI researchers globally are from China.
Yeah.
So they're Chinese AI researchers, and that's a huge amount. And again, Brian, yes, that is what's reported, right? But to talk about what you touch upon what you're talking about, Robert, is all of these steps that China's taken, whether it be loosening up regulations or just supporting their own companies and things like that. Everything we're seeing is definitely a concerted effort. Right. I was just reading on this article about how they released what they're calling the North Artificial Intelligence Digital Base, right, out of Weihai. And essentially, this is like they have these economic zones that they've created so that they could focus on development and things like that. But I see this kind of step as a way to consolidate that AI research and that pushing AI forward. And one of the largest data companies, App and Data Tech, has announced that they're going to settle in that area, right? And so that's, and they say because there's great educational infrastructure and all those kinds of things. But I think these are major moves, and collectively we can see that it's to position and make sure that they have the lead in any AI development, application, and distribution.
I forgot I had this, and I just want to share it super quick because I forgot I had this chart that I'd saved. Top AI research areas, and this says it's small. It says by numbers of research articles as of May 1st. This is only a couple days old. And at the bottom, just to give context, China leads the U.S. as a top producer of research in more than half of AI's hottest fields, according to new data from Georgetown University Center for Security and Emerging Technology, shared first with Axios. So I know not everybody can see this, but
scroll down. I'll read that part below that. Why it matters.
Why it matters. The findings reveal important nuances about the global race between U.S. and China to lead AI advances and set crucial standards for the technology and how it is used around the world. And then if we just look at the chart here, we're seeing everything from 14,000 research papers on large language models, 10,000 on distributed machine learning, 7,000 on point clouds, neural scene representation, so on and so forth. So I forgot I had this. I just wanted to share this as part of the conversation here.
So what do y'all think? I mean, when you start putting together the pieces of China, you have government funded, you have not accessible to the chips that have been used to build and train the foundation models. And then you have the quarter of the population, the core of the experts are Chinese origin. And then what's the last element? The element of shoot. Yeah. So what how does that factor into also the governance? They're not going to be governed like the rest of the world. The rest of the world is putting committees together about fair usage and policies. I don't think that they are, because if you've ever been to China, there's cameras everywhere. They're tracking everything already. So there is nothing that you can do there and not be known, right? So it's very much, I hate to say a police state, but it's definitely you're surveilled all the time. So they don't have the same concerns that the Western world has about privacy or concerns about using it for nefarious purposes. Not that they're nefarious per se, but they're not putting together committees like we are with Sam Altman working with the United States or other policies that are going on in Europe. So what are your thoughts on those four elements and how the future of AI coming out of China is going to look?
Well, I would say just real quick on the surveillance side of it. Yes, we've known that for a long time. also think it'd be silly to think these things don't in some ways exist in the US, but also they're sort of proving the model. And, I even read reports that this wasn't yesterday as I was researching for this show, but I've read where, they're gamifying it as well. So what I mean by that is like, if you're on the streets and there's attractive ways for you to interact with maybe a AI representation or whatever, where there's a camera there and it's interacting with you. Think like going to the parks where you can do your wizarding wands and you can make it do things in the window, right? You can interact with it in one way or the other. I do worry a little bit about this idea of gamifying these on public streets. It naturally attracts your attention. You interact with it, and it's an easier way to capture data if I can get you to stand still in front of my camera because you're having fun with it. And we can say, oh, but that's China. And then I go, oh, but like, how easy is that to put in a window of a public?
Yeah. So they're blatant about
100%.
it. We're a little bit more kind of tiptoeing into that sphere. I get it. But they also, that aside, the surveillance part aside, the fact that they don't have qualms about it when they're not putting together committees to police the use of AI because they're leading the development. It's government sponsored. So how do you think that's going to affect the product they put out in 5 years? Or how do you feel like they're going to compete in the landscape, even though they're hindered by the H100s being banned?
So I have a couple points that I want to make. One is, while Brian, we may not have parks where you wave magic wands. Everyone driving a Tesla around is literally driving cameras around to observe the rest of the world and how they drive.
Not government sponsored.
No, not government sponsored. The second thing is the news that we get about AI is all in comparison to us. Right? GPT-4 is top. That's the top thing. We have no idea that the models that get released, according to people using them, are not in comparison with GPT-4, but we have no idea what China is using in-house because, as Robert says, they control what's released, right? They control what's released from their country. Mm-hmm. And I think that's that's a key factor. One of the things that Sam talked about in the interview that we covered yesterday was that he thought as things move forward, every country will have their own country AI, their own government AI that is controlled or built or has specs that are part of their country's values and part of that. And I think that is likely to become more and more important in this context. I don't think China is scientifically, China may be open and we're all sort of moving in the same direction. Mm-hmm. But what I haven't heard is China's moving toward AGI as right? Like the party line from the people that we typically cover is AGI is to the benefit of all humanity. Mm-hmm. That discourse or that talking point is missing in the information that China puts out.
Yeah, good point.
It is not something that's happening.
So I do want to share this. This is from lifearchitect.ai, brilliant guy out of Australia. He has a wonderful website. You should check it out. He's got this model table he's been building for years and it's free to access. He's got a tab specifically for China models. It hasn't been updated in a while, so I'm not sure why he hasn't done that, but this gives you a little bit of indication of what they got going on. This one only has 103 models. But if you're interested in that, I just want to throw that out to the people here. And also it shows all the other language models and different aspects of them. It's a great website to kind of show some good graphics for you to use for any presentations you're doing. Or I love the way he visualizes the language models and context of other things. So take a look at that. But I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention because of the China piece. So
nice.
So let me just say that China does have some evidence of at least lip service. We might, in our sort of cynical approach to China, they pay lip service to the ethics of AI. They have an organization called the Cyberspace Administration of China, and it establishes rules and regulations around AI ethics, security, and social impact to try to promote the development of AI, but without disruption of their society. They definitely have an authoritarian control over their society, but they're also trying to create a productive and happy society. So we have to give them some credit for that. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that, I want to touch on the chips issue because, NVIDIA has been, working on chip designs for GPUs and advanced processing for the training of supercomputers that do AI at the frontier level and for every other application. And they have such a head start on most other companies in the world that there's a fear, I'm sure, in China, as there is a fear for us with respect to the potential acquisition of Taiwan, which is the center of development and manufacturing of those chips. There's concern about reliance on foreign technology. Currently, China's worried about having to have their companies reliant on foreign technology to support their initiatives in AI for strategic reasons, military and just economic in the world. But that may shift if the Taiwan situation, jumps into flames. And
Andy, I got to say, isn't that like poking a bear? Isn't like, hey, China, you can't have any of these Taiwan produced chips. Isn't that like poking a bear and say, yeah, we don't want you to invade Taiwan, but we're going to make you madder again by adding one more reason to invade Taiwan because they're going to have technology that you can't get access to. Anyway, sorry, I think that was very funny.
A great analogy. I just saw some bears here this morning. So I'm not sure how you got that one. Anyway, the point is that we're trying to retard, but not end their ability to produce the most advanced models. And that has maybe a life cycle of 3 or 4 years, is my guess. We can keep China back in the back of the pack for a few years, but not for long. They will not be reliant on our sourcing or our technologies for any period of time, any significant period of time in strategic terms.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And in terms of vision and visual information, just in the same context of like the more information you have to feed it, the smarter it gets. Because of their surveillance, they have a ton of data. I also find it interesting, like China,
that's a really good point, Beth.
We're in the US and our like historical like written documentation or things that we have produced is obviously fairly young because we're a fairly young country. I wonder about the impact of the longevity of China as like a literate society that produced content that can train AI. Right. Again, the more parameters you have, the more, the smarter, and the more time you have, and the more compute you have, the smarter they get.
I honestly, Beth, I think that's the biggest nugget that we've talked about today. Is what you just said is about China's access to the data set, the data to train future models. They have obviously a much bigger than anybody else. I love that point. That's important. That's an important nugget. I don't know what y'all think. That to me was like kind of huge.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you have if you are surveilling your populace and your populace is 1 billion people, that's, so many more data points than the population of any other.
Yeah, country. And they have China cars that we don't have anywhere else. Like Tesla's over there just barely, right? They're just getting a deal with Elon recently, but like Tesla's got all this data, as you mentioned before, Beth, of driving data, but they have that times 100 or times 1,000,000. I don't know what the number is, but it's like they have driving data, they have surveillance data, they have facial recognition data, they have body walking data. They can tell like by a person's gait who they are, and they surveil all the time. So all that data, I mean, I don't know what that could be used to train on, but it doesn't matter. That's the beauty of data. You don't have to worry about. Yeah, Brian, were you going to share something?
Will the volume of data? I mean, it seems to make sense that the volume of data would allow better insights or quicker development, right? But that might be a quality versus quantity debate there. But
it's not. I don't think it's either. It's just that it's like if I had a paint board and I had 5 colors versus 10 colors, I can do a lot more with 10 colors than I can with 5. So they have 10 colors to play with, to inference, to make a painting, right?
Well, I don't think they have more data points, per person. If we were going to break it down like that, the surveillance done in China is obvious, right? They're upfront about it, but it's not like we aren't surveilled in the U.S. by the various companies, right, in their fields. So the data points exist there.
But still, it's
having access before.
It's not government.
Right.
Like government doesn't have the data. Like my phone, a lot of Apple might have it, and all the apps I have might be tracking me. Sure, I get that, and they're just listening to me right now.
Yeah, but there's a legal infrastructure that allows the government to simply ask for it, and then it's given to them. So I mean, they don't have to be like Big Brother U.S. government. They're just like, hey, Apple, we need this data point. Oh, okay, here you go, because that's the legal structure for it. I mean, there's
wait a second. I don't think it's as easy as, oh well, here you go.
Well, I am broad stroking it, of course, yes, but it's
which
there
is what
and
gave
available.
rise, by the way, Jyunmi, to the need for the NSA to do this surreptitiously, to actually
which recently got passed.
The data.
Yeah,
and they've gotten their hands slapped, and I think that they don't have the same access that they used to have to all of the data from private companies that they might have gotten surreptitiously. Anyway, I think I just wanted to make the counterpoint that our government doesn't have a heavy hand with private companies. And I think the TikTok situation.
Well, my tin hat would tell you would prove otherwise.
It's a First Amendment issue.
And now we shall hear from Robert's tin hat.
Yes, my tin hat is that no, they definitely do, and they're definitely doing it, and they're definitely doing it through back channels or ways that agreements between them and Apple that we don't know about, and they do get access to phone data for criminals and stuff, which is a slippery slope, and it's whatever. We're not that far away from China's police state as everybody would like to think. So my bunker over in Wyoming is fully stocked with food, and I'm ready to go.
That's a pretty reactionary statement. I have a reaction to it, but it's just that I don't know. You might be right, but I think it's equally true that our government is being kind of contained and limited. By comparison, China's government is the center of power for everything.
Right.
And it guides everything, including economics. So there's a stark difference there that we have to recognize.
Definitely.
So I wanted to take a second and sort of circle back to the research side of things, right? And that was a fantastic graph that you had, Brian. The research announcements that come across, our feeds and things like that. The ones that I've been most interested in is, of course, what's at the lead of the trend, and that happens to be like multimodal, right? All of these advances in multimodal, in video, image, text, audio, all of these steps. And I'm seeing, this is our offering now. This is our new research in this field. And now I'm probably a bit more focused on the multimodal, especially like video and audio and things like that than other people. But I don't know if this is a concerted effort, but I'm seeing blow for blow going out here, right? So if OpenAI announces Sora in the next month, we see video. Every time we see, here's an image generator, or here's some other generative AI model with images or video or sound, we're seeing a release like, that's died down. Here's another bit news. We're seeing the Alibaba version of this, and how that research is implemented. Because when we see something coming out of AI or OpenAI, sorry, like Sora, we see how they're planning to apply it in terms of Sora and their voice model. They've done selective release, and it's going to specific experts, so to show and then come back with their testing and things like that. What we're seeing from the Chinese side of things, the Baidus and the Alibabas, is here's our announcement, and here's a company that's opening it to consumers immediately. So there's definitely a separate choice of how they plan on releasing, and we've kind of talked about this today, but there's the careful, and then there's let the people decide, essentially. And I think that's the major advantage in growing, whether it's catching up or growth or advancement over other opponents in the field, is they're willing to throw more of it out to the public to use and test and just see what it's like.
Well, I wanted to bring up the, just as we're wrapping things up, I just wanted to bring up the Baidu or Vidu, however you say it. Also, I have this tab open. This is actually shangshu-ai.com. This is the company that created that Sora-like, video. And you can see here, it did say it. It moved the news here. Shout out to, by the way, to Google Translate. I haven't used it a ton, but man, has it gotten better with AI. So the fact that this is all in Chinese and Google Translate makes this a very easy page to read. Anyway, in their news here, and the thing they talk about Vidu, saying it's the first Chinese long length or something model. Maybe it'll come up on here in a second. But you can see about all their research, their multimodal large models, whole bunch of stuff, their image creation. So they're not just doing the video. It looks like Shangshu-AI has been around for a bit here. Here's a little bit more of like their video generation. And then it gets into some of the Discord, it looks like, as well as some other things, their lab results and all that kind of stuff. I also did want to bring up, just because I found it interesting, is that you can see it at the top here. Vidu, the new Chinese text to video AI model, on the 27th of April, the Chinese university had a startup. They announced Vidu, the text to video AI model, similar to OpenAI Sora. Unfortunately for us, they chose the name Vidu for their AI model. We've been using this name for our products since 2021. What makes that worse is they also do like video. So right. Vidu, Loom style video personalization at scale, which might have some AI to it. So I always feel bad for when this happens with companies and these things get announced out of some other country. It's got the same name. It causes problems. This is Vidu.io, but that appears to be, I don't know if it's an American company, maybe somewhere else. It's in English. And now they have to they had to put this at the top of their page in order to compare and contrast and let people know what it is. And they, props to them. They tell them, if you want to know where it is, here's the page to go to, which is how I got to the first one. And then, other companies are out there as well, like O1.ai, which is one of 4 or 5 of the sort of major players, along with Moonshot and Baidu and maybe another one in there. And you can see on their page as well, pretty basic page overall, but they're doing a lot of things we see on the US pages, which is like, hey, here's our model. Here's how it compares and contrasts to GPT-4 Turbo, where it's maybe perhaps doing a little better, a little worse. So, it's a basic page. There's not a whole lot to it, to be perfectly honest. But they're just talking about their different platforms. And this is one of several companies that are getting heavy investment and are sort of breaking away. It appears like, from the pack, them and about 4 others. Alibaba's in there, Bidu's in there. O1, like I said, Moonshot was another one that was doing interactive stuff with their clients, with their customers. So just want to bring those up. You could definitely research them. I guess we'll find out by me going to all these websites what the fallout of that is afterwards, and whether I get any knocks on the door or otherwise. So I did a lot of research and went to a lot of Chinese websites, and we'll see how that goes from there, I guess. But
so one of the things that was in the first page that you were scrolling down was evidence of 3D. And that makes sense, because if they have that much visual data, 3D is something that's starting to be pushed in the US. It's on Midjourney's plan. There are definitely things that can produce 3D. It doesn't seem great yet, but 3D is not just important for like gaming characters and video, that kind of stuff. It is also evidence of understanding the world and how the world functions, how things move in 3D space as opposed to 2D space.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, creating digital twins. I don't know that we've really necessarily talked about that. Maybe we have at one point on the show. Digital twins and things like that, being able to, accurately recreate and represent a 3D model or a twin of real world space has huge implications. And I saw stuff, I think it was Matt Wolf. I was watching one of his videos with the 3D modeling where it was doing a okay job of predicting the back end. It's just a flat right. Picture of Pikachu. That happens to be the one that they're showing on here. Of Pikachu. And I guess there's a lot of information about what the backside of a Pikachu would look like from the cartoons and otherwise, but it's predicting that and actually creating a 3D out of a 2D, which I find to be really, really interesting. Like you said, Beth, like, I don't think any of it is like shocking right now, but like how far away are we from this being able to be directly inputted into like an Unreal Engine, and somebody is able to move through that space in a meta type landscape quickly?
That can be done right now.
But
how good it is, but it can be done. Yeah.
Right. I just mean at a high level where I could walk out my door here and produce a digital twin of what's on my front street. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that's one of the goals in the AR VR space. Mm-hmm. And, like with spatial computing in general, and that whole field is to have that overlay that people can interact with at any point. Just changing, going back to, again, like our episode on HCI and things like that, and just changing how we interact with that computing element.
We'll wrap it up here because we're about that time. But tomorrow, come back and check us out for the news. On Thursday, Beth mentioned it. We're going to be talking about multimodal models, but we're going to be talking about evaluations of multimodal models. And I think we'll even just get into evaluations in general and how you should be using them as part of your AI strategy at your business, because evaluations are a real big part of having a successful AI deployment, as far as I'm concerned. And then Friday, hopefully we will have the whole group here. We're going to try. It's our 200th episode. And so we're going to have some fun. We're going to look back. We're going to get some of the fun episodes and some of the, we were just saying before we went live, some episodes do amazingly well and we would have never predicted that. And of course, there's always episodes that we think are going to be home runs and they don't do as well. And those are always fun to look at to figure out what people are responding to and otherwise. So that's coming up on Friday. Please come back for that one and celebrate with us for our 200th episode. We can't believe we're already there. And until tomorrow for the news, guys, we'll see you then. Thanks for everybody for hanging out. Bye. Maybe. Now, bye.
Aloha.